Hey everybody, welcome back to Girl Talk. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, before we get started, if you could give me a like, share, a thumbs up, comment, hit that subscribe and notification button, I would appreciate it. So today we're actually going to be uploading part 9, or day 9, I should say, of the Lindsay Clancy trial. It's going to be in 2 parts. The first one is about 20 minutes, and we're actually going to go over to Pretty Lies and Alibis for that. She did a really good recap, and it's just her talking. So if you want to hear full testimony, you can go over to Court TV, check them out. East Idaho News, I know that one's a really good one too. So let's get right into it.
What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Friday, August 7th. We are going to jump into the morning recap of day 9 in the Lindsay Clancy trial. The first couple of witnesses really were just witnesses to show that Lindsay was acting normal when she was around them. The first witness, Kimberly Hardy, works at the Kingsbury Club. They have tennis courts, a gym, a pool, and they have a playroom for kids. And she talked about interactions with Lindsay. She thought Lindsay was shy, and it was a little hard to start a conversation with her. They would bring Cora and Dawson, but not Callan, because Lindsay was scared he may get sick being around a bunch of kids. She last saw them in the club in mid-January 2023. She said Lindsay seemed happy to see the kids, and the kids were excited to see her when she would come pick them up. The next witness, Sarah Carney, she's married to Kyle Carney, who testified yesterday, the man who went to college with Patrick. She went to college with him as well. She basically talks about the same thing her husband did, which is they came over for the bonfire. Callan was home with Lindsay's parents, and she did notice that Lindsay started to seem thinner. The next witness, Dr. Goodhart, she's a psychiatrist at McLean Hospital. Each patient is assigned a mental health professional and a nurse. A Section 12 is someone who is admitted due to a mental health issue, and it's when you have to go there. It's not a choice. A Section 10 is someone who voluntarily brings themselves in. For the most severe cases, a one-to-one staff member is with you at all times. Lindsay was getting 15-minute checks and was considered low risk at admission. Her chief complaint was sleep deprivation unless she took meds, and also reported feeling numb, as well as issues managing her medications. A man named Dr. Hogan did her APS evaluation. Lindsay did tell him that she had thoughts of self-harm but had no plans. She reported during the evaluation beginning in September, she started Seroquel and Remeron, and that's when she started having self-harm thoughts. She was kept on the medication she was admitted with. The provisional diagnosis was major depressive disorder, severe without psychotic features. This is done with the psychiatrist who initially evaluated her. When Lindsay was on the unit, she was seen January 1st by a different psychiatrist, Dr. Madva. Lindsay denied depression and self-harm thoughts, but she did report feeling numb and having mild anxiety. She said the meds made her feel numb, and the doctor determined it was possible the numbness was a side effect, so they planned to taper her off of that and observe to see if the numbness went away, and also to look for any other symptoms. She came in on Seroquel, 100 milligrams daily, Valium, 2 milligrams. She doesn't remember how often she was taking that, and also Benadryl. Lindsay reported one provider suspected bipolar disorder, but she disagreed with that diagnosis. Lindsay said she slept better on lower doses of Seroquel, and the plan was to keep her on 75 milligrams and reduce to 50 milligrams the next day. The witness reviewed notes the nurse made by interacting with Lindsay on the 1st. That day, she participated in a group activity, saw a mental health worker, and they go through the interactions on January 2nd, including a nurse and Dr. Madva. January 3rd was the witness's first face-to-face with Lindsay. She assessed her mental status. She had normal speech. She was polite and cooperative. Once she was off Seroquel, the witness wanted to put her on Cymbalta, and it depended on how she was doing once she was off the Seroquel. The Valium was switched to Ativan because of the shorter half-life, which she says manages anxiety very well. Lindsay had taken it before, but said Patrick was concerned about her on a benzo. The witness saw no signs of psychosis, and neither did anyone who had evaluated her there. Postpartum depression was a consideration for the witness, and postpartum psychosis is a serious consideration as well. But the witness diagnosed her with insomnia with mental health condition. She said one day of observation was not enough time to give a solid diagnosis. January 4th, she saw her again, and Lindsay reported she did get some sleep, and there was talk of discharge. They talked about discharging that Friday, and Lindsay was anxious about being in the hospital and wanted to go home to her family, so she asked to leave early. The witness said she could go provided she had psychiatric follow-up the next day. She was already on Ativan at admission and also taking trazodone for sleep. The witness had no concerns about discharge as far as her safety or the safety of others on the 5th. She thought Lindsay seemed like a caring mother. She had a lot of family support, no history of postpartum psychosis. Lindsay never stated she had homicidal ideations, and Lindsay was able to make that follow-up appointment on her own. Upon discharge, the medication plan was to continue Ativan for sleep and taper off if things improved. Also to take trazodone and melatonin. She said she assumed she would take the Seroquel as prescribed. Someone from the hospital reached out to Patrick, and he reported Lindsay had not had self-harm ideations in the past. Patrick told them Lindsay was concerned about the benzodependency, but she told staff that it was Patrick who was worried. He was not happy with the medical care she had received before her admission, and Lindsay asked about resources to find new doctors, but she did feel comfortable managing this at home. The witness discharged her with a 14-day supply of Ativan and trazodone. On cross, when she was discharged, what resources were provided to her? The witness said she told her to go on the website Psychology Today and also gave her information about finding new providers through her insurance company. Other than her case manager from Blue Cross Blue Shield and giving the website, what resources were provided to her? The witness said those are printed on the after visit summary, but she does not know what they are. They point out Lindsay came in voluntarily. The witness said there are 4 psychiatrists assigned to the facility, including her. So that makes up 4 different teams, and a nurse is assigned to each team, as well as a social worker and a mental health worker. She's asked how long does the initial evaluation take, and she does not know. But she knows it's a full psychiatric evaluation with chief complaints, history of present illness, past psychiatric issues, social history, family history. There's a mental health exam, and then they make an assessment. When asked if she renewed prior notes of Lindsay while at McLean, the witness reviewed what was available to her. The defense asked, did you look into her prior history? And the doctor said that's part of the evaluation, as well as seeing her in person. Defense asked, did anyone contact the first medical professional she saw? Who was her psychiatrist? The witness said she knew of the nurse practitioner Lindsay was seeing, but she didn't talk to her, and she didn't have access to Lindsay's records because they weren't in her system, so they can't get access immediately. The defense asked, did you ask Lindsay to sign a waiver to get those records? She said nobody did. She only knew when Lindsay came into the hospital that she was on Seroquel and Valium. She did know Dr. Tufts was the first person she saw. The defense says, yeah, she advertised she was an expert in perinatal care. The witness wouldn't know why she saw Dr. Tufts. Defense asked what medications did Tufts prescribe. The witness said Lindsay told her Zoloft. The defense asks, isn't it important to know about her evaluation by Dr. Tufts? And the witness said Lindsay was cooperative and forthcoming, so she had no reason to think Lindsay would not be honest about that. Defense, is it appropriate to trust what a patient in a mental ward is saying to you? Wouldn't it be important to talk to her other doctors? And the witness said she had no reason not to trust Lindsay. The defense asks about the MMPI, which is a self-assessment test. It kind of helps determine if someone is lying or minimizing their symptoms. The witness doesn't know much about this scale or test. She also didn't know if any psychological tests were administered to Lindsay, and she doesn't know if Lindsay called the self-harm hotline to report any self-harm thoughts. The defense asked, would that be important to know? The witness says she told them she was having self-harm thoughts but had no actual plans. Isn't it a big deal she reported going 48 hours without sleep? The witness does not remember a time frame she went without sleep, but knew she had problems sleeping. Defense asks, wouldn't it be important you know her sleep patterns before she was admitted? And the witness says yes. Defense, do you ever hear of patients who minimize or lie about their symptoms? And it's important to talk to someone else to find any evidence of symptomology. And the witness said, when a patient is talking to us, it's not about their words, it's about body language and eye contact. You can use that to get a sense of whether the person is being truthful or not. The defense says, she was very sick, wasn't she? And the witness says, I don't know what you mean by very sick. Defense, you said you assumed she would take what you prescribed, but do you think someone with a mental disease would do what you told them? The witness says if they're cooperative and reliable, yes. She stated she had intrusive thoughts. What were they? The witness says thoughts of self harm. How often? The witness doesn't know. Lindsay was what she described as a brain fog. The witness agrees with that. She also complained she felt like she was a zombie. The witness said she didn't use those words. Did she say that to anyone else? The witness says no. You knew what meds she was on. The witness says she was told to stop taking the Zoloft. The witness says you'll have to ask Dr. Tufts, and the defense attorney says, oh, I will. How many patients have you had suffering from postpartum psychosis? She doesn't think she's seen any. As far as postpartum depression, she's treated a lot of those cases over 20 years. The DSR is a statistical manual. Do you rely on this? The witness said the diagnosis is based on the criteria that's stated in this manual. The defense says it's like a cookbook. It tells you the ingredients of mental disease. He points out postpartum depression is a subcategory of depression. Is postpartum psychosis in there? And she does not know if that is in the manual or not. What impact does the thyroid have on postpartum? She doesn't know. She said that's more for internal medicine, but then she says she knows it can affect mood and anxiety. The defense says your records indicate she had a thyroid read that's in the records. But the witness says that the TSH levels, which is your thyroid levels, was not from 2022 or 23. The defense points out those levels were imported into record from years before. She says she would have reviewed those labs, but can say it was within normal limits, but she doesn't know how old those test results were. The Edinburgh EPDS is a scale for postpartum depression symptoms, and it evaluates risk factors. The witness says it assesses the level of depression. Lindsay was not given that, and they don't necessarily administer scales there. And the defense says, but that's an acceptable tool used to evaluate patients. What investigation did you do between what Lindsay reported and what Patrick reported? She did none. When asked about taking Lindsay's blood, the witness says they don't take blood. The defense says it's not a procedure when a patient is on a cocktail of meds. No. The witness said they did take blood in the ER, but they did not test for drug levels. They only checked for substances of abuse, which Lindsay had none. She said to test for medications in her system, it would depend on the half-life of the medications when the blood was drawn, but they didn't look for that. They bring in social worker notes, and the case was discussed in rounds, which is a meeting in the morning with everyone on Lindsay's team. Lindsay stated she wanted to be home the next weekend for Cora's birthday. She also said 12 weeks after delivery, she stopped nursing Callan and he wouldn't take the bottle. And in her report, someone said she had what they called situational anxiety. The defense says 1 week after taking Zoloft, she developed insomnia, and the psychiatrist told her to stop taking it. Do you know in your investigation when the doctor told her to stop taking Zoloft? And the witness said it would be in her notes. The defense says Lindsay was discharged and that was not against medical advice, and the witness says that's correct. You said postpartum psychosis is a serious condition when evaluating, and you said she should follow up with other healthcare providers, and she did make an appointment within the hour of your suggestion. Yes. That appointment was with Dr. Tufts for the next morning. On redirect, they bring in the discharge paperwork, and the Commonwealth points out the packets where it gives instructions if you need immediate help, numbers to call if you're feeling like you want to harm yourself, community resources, and things like that. Commonwealth said counsel kept referring to this as a locked unit. It's locked for patient safety. But as far as Lindsay, she voluntarily agreed to be there until it was safe to leave. And the witness says yes. Lindsay was assessed as a low risk, and she was vocal about how long she wanted to stay and when she wanted to leave. The Commonwealth. The original plan was for her to stay until Friday. The witness said that for her, she takes it day to day. She had observed Lindsay's symptoms for a day or two and felt the issues that she came in with were resolved at that point. She was sleeping better and her mood had improved. With more time, could you have found why she was reporting feeling numb? Yes. You didn't ask her to sign medical releases. If you had more time with her, could you have, and there was an objection that was sustained. She said they don't ask for releases to be signed on a regular basis. It depends on if the patient appears reliable, the results of their evaluations in the emergency room, and on the unit. They got information from Patrick, so she didn't feel the immediate need to get records from Lindsay's other providers. Her observations seemed consistent of what Lindsay was reporting. And as far as the blood work, there was no reason to look at her medication levels with the meds she was on. Commonwealth. Lindsay reported brain fog. She was observed by nurses to have improved memory and concentration while she was there. Yes. And Lindsay never indicated she had a plan to self-harm. Next on the stand, a big witness that I think we've all wanted to hear from, Dr. Jennifer Tufts. That was the first person that Lindsay saw. Lindsay filled out some papers before her first appointment about her prior mental health treatment. She had previously taken Prozac in nursing school briefly, as well as Wellbutrin, and listed no side effects. Lindsay reported having 1 to 2 drinks up to 5 times a week, and that form asked if the patient feels guilty about drinking, and Lindsay said she did. For the questionnaire about symptoms, she reported feeling anxiety attacks, decreased appetite, easily distractive, excessive worry, unable to feel pleasure, unable to fall asleep, and racing thoughts. She did not check off engaging in risky behavior, excessive energy, feelings of hopelessness, emptiness, or impulsive behavior. They also asked, did anything happen to make you feel you don't want to live? No. No plan to hurt herself, no access to weapons, never made a serious attempt to self-harm, and no substance abuse was reported. The witness said that Lindsay's answers were an indication of an anxiety disorder due to her self-reporting of feeling that way daily, as well as answering some other questions about this. They did a screening for depression, and Lindsay's responses told the witness, with some of her answers being positive, she should be assessed for depression. They first met through telehealth on September 15th, 2022. The telehealth decision is made between the doctor and the patient. She asked Lindsay if she had self-harm or homicidal thoughts, and Lindsay said no. She also denied hearing any auditory hallucinations or seeing any visual hallucinations. There was no mania, like feeling overly euphoric. They talk about her life history, medication she took in the past, and they look for signs of psychosis, such as being agitated, uncooperative. Is their speech fast? Are they speaking at all? Their mood, what they say about their feelings, their thoughts. Are they disorganized, jumping around, anything bizarre or paranoid? Lindsay didn't check any of those boxes. She would ask about hearing voices or seeing things other people didn't, and Lindsay said she did not. She assesses the patient's judgment or insight. Is it logical or is it not? She also assesses memory and looks for details and specifics, and Lindsay was all clear. The first meeting, Lindsay's mood was okay, and her affect was anxious. Lindsay was asked what brought her there, and her biggest complaint was anxiety, so Dr. Tufts recommended Zoloft, and they had a discussion about it. Lindsay was reluctant to take meds, but she was considering it and interested in learning what meds may be helpful to her. They also discussed side effects. She recommended Zoloft because it's a first-line med for anxiety, and it's also the safest medication women can take when they're nursing. She started on 25 milligrams with instructions on how to increase that dose to 50 milligrams after a week. She also recommended Lindsay see a therapist, which they had on staff. She made a referral, and Lindsay did start to see a therapist, Jennifer McAllister. Lindsay's goals were symptom reduction and improved functioning. She was reluctant to start medications because she was worried about the side effects in general. The witness explained the side effects of Zoloft and recommended she actually start with sertraline, but she can't remember if she was going to start that or not. So her initial diagnosis was generalized anxiety disorder and adjustment disorder with depressed mood. Adjustment disorder with depressed mood is where you have symptoms, but it's secondary to the situation. They don't meet full criteria of having major depressive disorder, but they do show some signs of depression. And that's where we left off for lunch. After the jury was sent out, the judge had a moment with the courtroom and said that anybody who says anything inappropriate, there's going to be a problem, and he reminds them there are microphones everywhere. I'm hoping to have the afternoon recap out as soon as I can, but I do have Meet the Teacher night from around.
Okay, so the afternoon session is about 20 minutes as well. So I think we're going to upload that now. That way we have it on one video. And again, this is courtesy of Pretty Lies and Alibis. We may have to listen to the psychiatrist testimony, though. I was curious to listen to that too, but this is a good recap, so we'll get right into it.
Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. Still Friday, August 7th. We're going to jump right into the recap of the afternoon testimony of day 9 in the Lindsay Clancy trial. Still on the stand, Dr. Jennifer Tufts, who was the first doctor that Lindsay saw. They talk about her medical history as far as medication she had taken. Prozac helped her in nursing school, and she took Zoloft after the birth of Dawson for a week. She was nervous about taking it with breastfeeding. She did mention having initial side effects, which Dr. Tufts said is very common for many people. Normal side effects like upset stomach, decreased appetite. There's an objection because she's giving general side effects, and the defense wants to know what Lindsay said, but she doesn't remember. But whatever side effects she did mention did not seem concerning to her. She explains the first couple of weeks of treatment in taking a new med, there's a lot of serotonin in the brain and in the gut. The gut symptoms present first. Usually it can cause diarrhea, nausea, decreased appetite. The symptoms that she expressed to Dr. Tufts felt overwhelmed, the baby needing more attention. She was too anxious to leave, worried Callan wouldn't eat or sleep because he was refusing the bottle, and that made her irritable. But she also had no concern about hurting the baby. She believes she gave her information about who to reach out to if there are concerns between appointments. Patients can also access numbers to call on the portal if they're having thoughts of hurting themselves. You can also text a number and it connects you to a counselor. The follow-up plan was to start the serotriptyline and follow up with her. September 28th of 22 was the next appointment. They discussed Zoloft, and Lindsay decided not to take it. She did report feeling a little better because the baby was sleeping more, and so was she. They went through a mental status exam, which that's an assessment at the point of meeting, which can change over time. It's how the patient appears. Are they cooperative? How do they speak? They describe their thoughts or their moods. Lindsay's result was oriented. She appropriately worked with Dr. Tufts, not depressed, not angry, a normal mood, and a full affect. She did say her insight was poor because Lindsay has some clinically significant anxiety. Her judgment was excellent, and despite the symptoms, Lindsay still did not want to try the medicine. She said she didn't order any labs because it wasn't necessary. They don't do them when a patient presents with only generalized anxiety disorder. However, they can order blood tests with certain meds that could affect your kidneys or your thyroid, but Zoloft does not fall into that category. She said the appointments are 25 minutes long, could be a little less. 17 minutes of that is for therapy, just talking, so she can get an assessment of mental state, and the other 8 minutes are focused on medication management. At this appointment, the plan going forward was Lindsay was improving, and they decided to pause the meds and have her meet with one of their therapists. And Lindsay was on board with that plan. There was a shorter time between appointments, and she was next seen October 3rd. She thinks Lindsay must have asked for this appointment. She asked for a maternity leave extension through their patient portal, and Dr. Tufts signed the paperwork. That message was sent September 30th, and it thanked her for her help. But Lindsay said she didn't feel mentally healthy enough with a baby not taking the bottle, and also staying up all night on third shift and then having to come home. So the witness replied it requires a lot of information to fill this out and they should go through it together. So they set an appointment. October 10th, Lindsay sent her another message and said the paperwork said she could return to a modified schedule 2 days a week and asked Dr. Tufts to change it, saying she's not able to work right now. So Dr. Tufts changed the paperwork for her. They both decided to extend this leave to January 1st. Also, on that October 3rd appointment, Lindsay seemed open to taking the medications. She was having more anxiety and thought the medications could help. But Lindsay said maybe she would try therapy first before starting the meds. The initial therapy assessment was the same day, October 3rd. She talked about having a strong family support, but she did say she wasn't very close with her in-laws and generally did not let them watch the kids. There was no particular reason for it, and they didn't bug her about it as far as not being able to watch the kids. Comparing her mental health status exam from the September 28th meeting to the October 3rd appointment, her insight was still poor, but no other changes. The next appointment, October 20th. Lindsay reported she had started taking the Zoloft. She had been on it for a week and had increased the dose the night before as Dr. Tufts had told her to. She reported feeling awful after increasing the dose. She had trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, diarrhea. Her mood was down. She felt foggy and anxious and just was scared to start anything new. They talked about whether it made sense to switch her medications, and because of her experience with Zoloft, Lindsay didn't want to start any new meds, and Lindsay denied any self-harm or homicidal thoughts. At this appointment, Dr. Tufts said she was clearly not psychotic. Her affect was depressed. She appeared visually sad. Her mood was self-reported as depressed and anxious. Lindsay did tell her she was scared she may start having self-harm ideations if she continued to feel bad. She followed up with her the next day on October 21st based on her negative symptoms with the Zoloft. And Lindsay had an appointment November 3rd with the therapist. So at this appointment, she told Lindsay to stop taking Zoloft and gave her a list of natural supplements to try. She told Dr. Tufts she wasn't depressed, but Dr. Tufts listed her affect as depressed based on her body language. Now, all of these appointments, by the way, were virtual, not in person. On this October 21st appointment, they decided she should start taking the lowest dose of Ativan, which is 0.5 milligrams, and that was to be taken as needed. Like if she started feeling anxious, she would take a pill. Lindsay wanted to try this for a week and also see the therapist. Dr. Tufts wanted to see her in a week since she was having these significant symptoms. Her next appointment was October 26th. Her affect was depressed, and Lindsay reported feeling anxious and depressed. She said Ativan helped her feel less anxious, but it did not help with her sleep. She had also tried Benadryl, and that seemed to help. She denied any intrusive thoughts at this visit. She still had this upcoming therapy appointment, and they talked about trying a new med since the side effects from Zoloft had gone away. Dr. Tufts suggested the lowest dose of Buspar for anxiety, which was 5 milligrams. They could up that to 60 milligrams if needed, and Buspar is a mild medication and typically well tolerated by people who have experienced side effects with other medications. They decided she would still take the Ativan as needed. She also suggested hydroxyzine. It's an antihistamine similar to Benadryl. It's safer compared to Ativan, and Lindsay agreed to that plan. But she was a little apprehensive about starting a new medication and possible side effects, but nothing major as far as her worries. There was no change in her mental status that day. She did go to a therapy appointment for an hour. Next appointment, November 2nd. They talked about the Buspar. Lindsay did not start it because she was scared to, so she continued with the Ativan. Her affect was appropriate. Lindsay reported feeling normal, not sad or angry, just neutral. No self-harm ideations and no sign of psychosis. They talked about alternatives to Ativan, and Dr. Tufts said she did not intend for Lindsay to take this long-term due to the high risk of dependency. She lists 4 or 5 different meds she suggested to her. They could be safer meds that could help with sleep and anxiety and don't carry that risk of becoming dependent. So they decided to taper her off the Ativan over a 2-week period. She next saw her November 22nd and learned Lindsay had started that program at South Shore Perinatal Mental Health Clinic. So it seemed like she would be transferring all of her care there. Lindsay told her she was going to start Prozac and still using Ativan and Benadryl. They talked about the going back to work letter, and she gave one authorizing Lindsay to go back to work, but it wasn't immediate. She can't remember the date. The next appointment she had with her was December 1st. Lindsay scheduled that appointment. She told her she ended up not returning to work, and they discussed that Lindsay wasn't getting better. She had tried to taper off of Ativan, but was having trouble sleeping. They tried a few medications like trazodone and Ativan with Benadryl, and that was helpful, and they added Prozac to help with sleep, but she had worse sleep once that started, and she stopped it. She then tried Remeron with Klonopin. She reported feeling disoriented and had rebound anxiety after the Klonopin wore off. These were medications that were prescribed at South Shore, by the way. She started taking the Remeron, but began having intrusive thoughts on that. She felt like she was going to die. Not by self-harm, but I guess you could maybe say like a feeling of impending doom. She denied self-harm ideation, but was feeling really bad. She said she was close to having self-harm thoughts and felt hopeless, but nothing active as far as any intentions or plans. Lindsay says she felt it was her fault for reaching out to other doctors and not sticking to a plan. Dr. Tufts told Lindsay she really should stick with one doctor for medications. She also explains psychiatric meds don't work immediately. Benzos can work quickly, but what prevents anxiety and depression do take some time to kick in. They discussed the possibility of bipolar disorder because of the poor reaction to some of her meds and also her insomnia. They talked about if the side effects indicated her possibly having bipolar disorder, but her assessment was negative and she didn't meet the criteria. She was still seeing South Shore and had an appointment there the next day. Dr. Tufts did recommend a partial hospitalization plan for extra support because she was having a hard time and talked of feeling hopeless and having intrusive thoughts. This is not a place where you would be there 24/7. It's a day program where you go in the morning and you leave later that day. She kept seeing Dr. Tufts in more of a supportive role. She didn't reach out to South Shore or ask Lindsay for consent because Lindsay was aware of the meds she was taking and was able to communicate her treatments. Another appointment, December 16th, they discussed Lindsay not feeling well, and Lindsay said the Valium and Seroquel helped with sleep, but she was depressed during the day and had self-harm ideation, but with no plan. She went to South Shore Hospital because she had a fear of not getting better. Lindsay told Dr. Tufts she had turned down the inpatient program at McLean Hospital, and they talked about all the meds she was on at the time. She thought Lindsay was going to that program at the hospital, which was the Women and Infants program. It's a partial hospitalization like she has suggested, and it focuses specifically on postpartum issues, so Dr. Tufts thought that was a good fit for her. Lindsay thought her depression was related to the Seroquel because of coinciding with the timing of the start of the depression symptoms and reported she was feeling more depressed. January 6, 2023, she had another appointment. She had just learned Lindsay had been discharged from McLean. Lindsay said she felt depressed because of the Seroquel and went to McLean to be safely tapered off of that. While there, she was given trazodone, Ativan, and melatonin, and she denied any self-harm or homicidal ideations. The only side effect was after the Ativan wore off, she felt more anxious. Her mood was listed as numb, which caused the witness concern because she appeared quite depressed. They increased the trazodone to 150 milligrams. In her notes, she has 3 options of Lindsay's condition. The first is improving, the second is the same, and the third is deteriorating. And so she put the third option, that Lindsay's condition was getting worse. Nothing Lindsay said led her to believe she was in imminent danger to herself or others. She can have someone involuntarily committed if she feels someone is a threat to themselves or others, but she did not feel Lindsay was at that level. She also relies on what the patient self-reports. January 9th of 2023 was the next appointment. Lindsay said the trazodone increase was helpful, but she had rebound anxiety after taking Ativan. She also reported not being able to cry. She could laugh a little, but denied thoughts of self harm. They talked about starting an antidepressant and the fact she did not get better after going off the Seroquel. So maybe it wasn't the meds causing it. They just may need to treat depression itself. They didn't pick a medication that day, but they did discuss amitriptyline and Wellbutrin. She also switched her from Ativan to diazepam since it metabolizes slower and is easier to stop on a gradual basis. January 11th, Lindsay sent the witness an email about ketamine therapy and asked if that might be a good option. The witness responded it was a great option, but it can be hard to get your insurance to cover it, and you typically need to show insurance you have tried 4 different antidepressants first. So she said Lindsay may need to try a new medication before they try for ketamine therapy. Lindsay said she felt very depressed and had been for a while and was desperate to get out of this state very quickly. The witness explained Lindsay was just starting to become resistant to treatment and ketamine therapy would be a good option. Another appointment, January 16th, her mood was low, depressed. She was able to get out of bed and care for herself and take care of the baby, but she did say she felt like the bonding with Callan felt forced. She denied self harm or homicidal ideation. They talked about a Valium taper because she did not want to take a benzo daily for sleep. They decided to go with the amitriptyline. This is an older medication that helps with insomnia as well as pain and headaches. She started her on 10 milligrams, which is the lowest dose. Dr. Tufts noted her mood that day was depressed. Her affect was depressed and flat. Lindsay denied the ideation, so the witness said she had no grounds to seek an involuntary hold. January 23rd was her last appointment with her. Her mood was depressed. Her affect was depressed and flat. She had started the amitriptyline with no side effects. Lindsay reported feeling more anxious and anxiety, like her heart racing. She had decreased appetite. She was down to 2 milligrams of Valium. She felt numb, forced herself to get out of bed and out of the house, but was able to do so. She said she was sleeping okay and denied any ideations, and Dr. Tufts saw no signs of psychosis. She said throughout their 14 visits, she thought Lindsay's insight was poor. And later, she thought it had to do with Lindsay's over attribution to the meds making her feel depressed, or essentially blaming the medications for depression when the doctor thought she was just depressed. The state asked if Lindsay was blaming the meds on depression rather than just admitting she was depressed. There was an objection that was sustained. So the plan going forward was to continue the same dose of diazepam since she was feeling anxiety, and they increased the amitriptyline dose. She never said she was planning to harm herself or the kids, and at no time during this session did Lindsay indicate she was a danger to herself or others. And Dr. Tufts recommended to Lindsay she continue with individual therapy. We know the next day was the day everything happened. So on Monday, Dr. Tufts will be on cross exam. We will run it live, but that is it for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, so that was a quick recap of day 9. So I believe we have everything uploaded now and we are caught up to date. All right, guys, thanks for joining me and we will talk soon. Bye.